Father, we are so grateful that you have saved us. You've called us out of darkness and into your marvelous light. And you've left us here to be light and to be salt. You've given us a job to do. You've called us to be your servants. And Lord, we have work to do as we await your return. And so, God, tonight we ask that you would help us to be about your business, that we would be fully engaged in what's going on around us, that we would be on mission. And that mission is people, and to be engaged with people, we have to seek to understand them. And we need to have your heart about people who are sinful. Without you, we'd be lost. And so, Lord, help us to do some lostology tonight to get to understand what's going on in the culture that's flowing around us. Not merely so that we would have fuel to win arguments. Lord, we confess that's not going to get the job done. But Lord, we don't want to win arguments. We want to win souls. We don't want to make points. We want to make disciples. And so, Lord, help us to not merely let this be merely an intellectual exercise or a way to load up our argumentative machine guns with additional bullets. But Lord, we want you to do the work of equipping us as the saints so that we can be built up to a body that pleases you, so that we can be the place where Fairhope can find out that Jesus is Lord. And that's the point of it all. God, we pray that you would give us minds to understand what you want us to know about you and your scriptures. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. We are going through a study this fall that's being guided by A Practical Guide to Culture by John Stonestreet and Brett Kunkle. I would encourage you to get a copy of this. It's very, very readable. It's very accessible, and comprehensive in many ways. And so it'll get your mind kind of warmed up and thinking. And so it's a good resource to have in your library. And remember, the subtitle is Helping the Next Generation Navigate Today's World. On a Wednesday night when our church building is filled with teenagers and youth, we believe that it's important to be engaging the next generation. And that there's never been a greater challenge, I believe, or I was sharing with one of the parents a little earlier. It's been a long time, perhaps 1,500 years or more, since the culture was genuinely oppositional to the next generation, where parents and people of faith needed to be rightly concerned about the culture's attitude towards the children. We all grew up in a time where the culture could be essentially trusted. We could drop them off at school, we could drop them off at Boy Scouts, we could drop them off at our institutions and feel pretty confident that maybe we might disagree about some things at the periphery, but on all the essentials, pretty much anybody we interacted with, we could take them to the children's, to their pediatrician, we could take them to their dentist, and we could expect that we're all on the same page about what we think is the most important. And those days are disappearing. They've disappeared in large portions of our country. They've disappeared in certain elements of our institutions. And if we're not careful and vigilant, they'll even disappear in our institutions that are right here in Baldwin County. And so we need to understand what's going on. And the days are past when we can keep our head in the sand, wish it will all just turn around and be different. The days are gone when we could fib to ourselves that maybe there's trouble in other places in the world or other places in the country, but don't have challenges here. Those days are gone. All right? When one of our fundamental cultural questions is, what is a woman? And the cultural gatekeepers can't give an answer to it, that must be the alarm that says, wake up! Wake up, oh sleeper, turn on the lights, get engaged about what's going on. We are confused. And so it's time for us, and we are called to gird our minds for action. We are called to rise up into this. And so I challenged you last week, and I'll challenge you every week. We need to be men and women of Issachar. We looked at 1 Chronicles chapter 12, especially verse 32, where the men of Issachar are described as those who, even though they were few in number, just 200 captains, even though they were small in number, compared compared to that roll call of all the other tribes with all their tens of thousands, just 200. But what made them so valuable is that they understood the times and they knew what Israel should do. They understood the times in order to know what to do. Here's the deal. If you don't understand the times, you won't know what to do. And you probably have, or you soon will experience, a moment when someone that's in your life that's in the youngest generation is going to say something and you're going to think, I don't understand that and I don't know what to do. Right? They're going to say something or espouse something or tell you something they learned at school or tell you something they brought back with them from a freshman course at Alabama or Auburn, and your hair is going to flip over on the top of your head. Those of you who have hair, it will flip over. I'm not pointing to anyone specifically. And you'll think, what do I say? What do I say? I don't understand that. I don't even know what planet that comes from. The natural tendency is to say, well, I don't understand that. That's not my responsibility. Somebody else will have to fix that problem. But as Christians, we've got to understand that the gospel says that when we notice that something is wrong, as people of redemption, we walk towards it. We actually receive that as an invitation, as a wide open door of opportunity, as a signal from the Lord. Here's your opportunity. Here's your mission. And we have to step towards that with as people who are prepared. So that's the point. We want to be people who understand the times, so that we can know what to do. Ephesians 5, 6 through 17, there was a time when we were in the darkness, but now the lights have been turned on. We need to wake up, turn on the light of Christ. If we don't have the light of Christ shining, then we are going to be trapped in darkness. In fact, people who don't have the light of Christ shining in them, they think darkness is light. Have you sort of noticed that? That some people think that up is down and left is right, and we've got it all backwards. But when you don't have an Archimedean point, when you don't have a firm place to stand, a true north, then you don't know how to be oriented in the world. And so those of us who have Christ had the lights turned on, and therefore we have this assignment to be careful with the times because the days are evil, to buy up the time, redeem the time because the days are evil. That's what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5. We have this duty to buy back these moments, to buy back these conversations for Christ, to redeem this time. And we do that by understanding the times and by knowing what to do. Last week we learned that we do live in confused times. Would you agree that we live in confused times? All right? Globally, certainly in the West and certainly in America, our times are confused. That's why it's more important to be people who understand the times and know what to do. There's been a collapse, all right? A collapse of an understanding of the self. That's summed up in the idea of not knowing what a woman is anymore, okay? The collapse of science. That's also typified in this inability to answer the question, what is a woman? How has the institution of science failed us by not being able to supply an answer to the question, what is a woman? How has science failed us?
Science declares there's a difference.
Right. Up to about 15 minutes ago, what did science have to say about the question of maleness and femaleness?
It's not a sign of birth.
Right. Well, tell me, how do we make the case scientifically? Come on, you can do it. Chromosomes. There you go. XXXY. We can do chromosomes, and the fact that which of your cells in your body have the presence of your sex chromosomes in them? All of them. Okay. Meaning also that genderedness shows up and is present in distinctive ways between men and women. That was scientific. And just a few months ago, I believe it was Science, the journal that up to a few years ago was the most reliable scientific journal in the world. If you were published in Science, you were a top 1%er in terms of your brilliance as a scientist. And now even Science, the journal Science is ambivalent about the binary nature of sex and gender. And so we've seen the collapse of science because we've seen the collapse of an agreement that the most important thing is the pursuit of truth. The Western culture is based on the idea that the pursuit of truth redeems. That if you pursue truth as your central goal, the truth will, well, what does the truth do? What does the Bible tell us the truth? It will set you free, right? But that's gone away, and so now science is not reliable. So we're told things like follow the science, right? You ever been told to follow the science? Except the science has now been corrupted by other agendas in it. The collapse of the self, the collapse of science, the collapse of social institutions. As I referred to earlier, we used to be able to take for granted that public education or the folks at the hospital and on could be relied upon and trusted, and now that trust has been shaken. Certainly the confidence in the government that we're being told the truth, that's collapsing. And then that fundamentally leads to the collapse of the shared sense of what is real, which is one of the things that institutions do, is they help us to stay on the same page about what we believe is real and what we believe is valuable. And so we are experiencing this time of confusion and collapse in the culture. And so what I want to go over with you tonight is a couple of things that underlie this sense of unease, this sense that things are going wrong and maybe badly so. I'm going to try to stop periodically and get your thoughts, because this may get a little philosophical at times. And this won't be the only time I go over some of these things. And I know it's going to challenge you. But the only reason I've come to grasp some of these things is because I've gone over it in my mind again and again and again and again and again. And so you're going to need to go over it again and again and again. You get these things squared away in your thinking, because it's very fundamental. And then the changes that are occurring are weird, all right? And so your mind it's hard to get your mind to do it, because you think, why would anybody think that? But as we all know, you can lie to yourself about things, and you can come to believe things that aren't true, and we do that. Anyway, so let's go a little bit deep. And then what I'll start doing, by the way, starting next week, we're going to have one of these super sessions next Wednesday night, and we're going to look at gender identity, this whole issue of gender identity and gender ideology. I'm going to try to break that down very specifically, especially as it relates to children. We'll start laying the foundation for some of these issues related to transgender and some of that. So, and that's going to be a big session that we'll do in here together. So I'm going to get practical, okay, and some of the things that are more hot topics. But the waves of culture are the things that splash you in the face and startle you and kind of make you notice. But what causes waves? Deep currents, right? It's things going on way down at the bottom that make all the noise at the top. And so if we're not willing to do the work, and it's sometimes hard work to get inside that diving bell and to go down into darkness and pressure and challenge and difficulty where the denizens of deep things are sometimes strange, then we're not going to really be able to do much about the waves. All right, and so let's look at what's deep. So maybe the deepest thing for this discussion tonight is, why is it our tendency as humans to get confused? Why do things seem to be confusing for humans? Would you agree that we get confused? All right. Have you ever been confused? Yes. And so what somebody said, they're confused right now. I get you. Right? Don thought he was, but he's not sure. Getting confused is a basic human fundamental. All right? Getting lost is an essential reality of being alive. The lie we've been telling ourselves as a culture is that we're so smart, right? And we've been telling ourselves this lie for about 300 years, that we can figure anything out, right? And so after 300 years of figuring everything out, have we figured everything out? No. What I said in a sermon a couple of weeks ago is I believe we know more and more about less and less. I think that's really the story of the last 300 years. We know more and more about less and less. So much so that we can't answer questions like, what is a woman? People 300 years ago know what a woman is. If you go to non-Western cultures, there's I think it maybe was it Matt Walsh did some of this, where he went to some African tribes and asked some of their leaders some of these questions, and they just die laughing. You know, and they're kind of like, well, you know, the word was that you guys were kind of smart. Y'all have lost your minds. These used to be well understood things, but as we've grown so technologically intelligent, we've lost wisdom. All right, and there's a big difference between wisdom and intelligence. And so the truth is that we're not characterized by being able to figure things out. There are some existential realities that remind us that human existence is comprised of irresolvable mysteries. Tell me, what are some of the, maybe you can get some of these, what are some of the things that are, we notice, but it's hard to resolve them? What are some things that are some of the mysteries of life?
Global warming.
Say again?
Global warming.
Global warming, all right, okay. All right, I'm going to explain that in a couple of weeks for sure. Well, what are some of the things that are mysterious about life?
Where did we come from?
Where do we come from and where we're going? Part of that is by what I'm calling the combination of finitude and infinitude. As individual human beings, we're very limited. We're here for just a little while, and because of that, because of sin, because of the size of everything else, we're very, very, very small, and we'll never be able to even scratch the surface of all that can be known or even all that we should know. All right, we're very small. Yet, the book of Ecclesiastes says God has put eternity in our hearts. We know there's more. We know there's up. We know our lives ought to be directed somewhere. We sense there's eternity. That even though we die, something shouts inside of us, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. How do I have a relationship with it? This is caused by the fact that we die. Everybody dies. And so the mystery of life and death, the mystery of now and forever. What's the relationship between what happened right now, what happened yesterday, what happened 10 years ago, what's going to happen 10 years from now? How does all of that fit together? And what should matter and what shouldn't? Sin and perfection is a part of this finitude, infinity. Part of our finitude is we're sinful. And so we get things wrong. Those mistakes compound. They create our character. They bend us so that we're bent away from the truth. We become less and less capable of knowing the truth. Yet we know things are wrong. So one of the things that C.S. Lewis spent so much time on is this moral sense. That the moment you say something's wrong, what are you also stipulating to the existence of? That there's something right. We can't get away from it, yet it's a mystery. I know things are wrong, I just don't know how to put it right. And we have lots of fights about what is right and what is wrong. We're having a massive discussion right now as a culture about right and wrong. And then ignorance and wisdom. What does it mean to know a lot? And what does it mean to be wise? And those things are often at odds with each other. And fact gathering doesn't lead to wisdom very often. And then meaning, and a word that's important for you to know if you don't know it is nihilism, this idea of meaninglessness, the idea that's preached by some that there's no ultimate purpose. It's just one thing after another. We're just bags of molecules kind of bouncing around, and we pass into and out of consciousness, and that's all there is. And that's weighed against this sense, this nagging sense that there's a greater and higher purpose. We just have trouble knowing what it is. So finitude and infinitude, the mystery of good and evil. How could a good God allow evil in the world? What does it mean to understand God's goodness and perfection, His power and righteousness when there's brokenness in the world? If God is so great and God is so good, why is the world so messed up in so many ways? It's hard to put that together. It's hard to solve. The problem of freedom and determinism. On one hand, we feel like we make choices, right? Did you make any choices today? Okay. But on the other hand, you ever felt like a victim of fate? Right? You ever had a day where you thought this, from the moment I woke up, this was going to be, everything seemed to be arrayed against me. So are we free or are we determined? Are we free or are we just the victims of the forces around us? Most of the Greek plays that were written are dealing with this question: am I fated or am I free? Oedipus Rex, those other things that you were forced to read in high school. The Greeks really struggled with that question way back, thousands of years ago. There is the confused and mysterious reality of pain and pleasure, right? Are we just to pursue pain or pursue pleasure and avoid pain? Is that a good plan for life, to pursue pleasure and avoid pain? Is that going to lead you where you want to go? Why? Who in the world would want to pursue pain? Who would want to pursue pain?
Nobody.
Well, but tell me, who?
Eastern religion.
Well, think about it now. What are the good things in your life that required you to be in pain? I just got back from a little gal that we love named August, who was willing to endure a lot of pain. So we think, well, pleasure would lead us in the right direction and pain would lead us in the wrong direction. But it's complicated, right? What about people who all they ever do is pursue pleasure? How's that work for them? They become hedonists and miserable, right? And so we think, and there are philosophers who've argued, Epicureans argued, just pursue pleasure and avoid pain. You'll end up at the right place, but it doesn't work. Yet I'll tell you, I'm sort of a fan of avoiding pain. I try to do so as often as I can. I'd rather do something that feels good than something that doesn't. Yet it's mysterious as to how all of that works out. Order and chaos, the relationship between the individual and the group, between the material and the immaterial. Is there a spiritual world? Is there a spiritual reality? If there is, can we call it real? If it's real, what is its relationship to the physical world? What is the difference between what's material and what's immaterial? Is there really a difference between my body, my physical body, and my mind? These are hard questions. These are confusing questions. We talk like they're readily apparent, but they're not. And then the one that I want to center on, and this may be a theme throughout my time with you during this semester, the challenging, paradoxical, sometimes mysterious relationship between what's at the center and what's at the margin. I think we're having a massive cultural collapse around the question of what belongs at the center and what belongs at the edge. One of the things you ought to do is walk back through books like the book of Leviticus and watch how much is being talked about being careful about what you put at the center and careful about what goes at the edge and what you do about things that are at the edge. Because is the edge bad? Is in the Bible, is the edge always bad? No. One of the things that comes to mind is you left the edges of your field unplowed, a place for people who were struggling so that they would not be left out. But were there commands about putting people outside the camp? Oh yes, there were some things that belonged in and some things that belonged out, and we need to be very clear about that. And what was the dynamic as you got closer and closer to the center in Israelite life? As you got closer and closer to the center, you had to be increasingly careful, increasingly attendant and aware of your own personal holiness, of the reality of your sin, that there were some barriers, and that you were worshiping a holy God. The question of Leviticus is, how can I have a relationship with a holy God? Leviticus begins with Moses outside the tent of meeting, and Numbers begins with Moses inside the tent of meeting. And so all of Leviticus exists to tell us how do we have a relationship with that thing that is at the center. What belongs at the center? And I think that is driving so much of what our cultural conversation is about, is what belongs at the center. That's why one of the things I want to encourage you to do, we've been tricked. We've sucked up several tricks as Christians. One of the main tricks is the separation between religious and secular, okay, or religion and science, right? Have you felt that dichotomy there? Religion, religious issues, spirituality belongs over here. And what do people say about spiritual issues in our culture? Where do those issues belong? Personal. It's personal, right? What's another word that we'll even use for it? It's private, right? And what do we mean when we say something's private? Or we give it that? It's nobody's business. I'm not to be asked about it. It has no bearing. It doesn't matter. And it would be best if those things were relegated to the side and that we would leave the regular world, the real world, the important world, to irreligion. But that is not true. Who out there is irreligious? My supposition is no one. Everyone's religious. First of all, anybody know what, give me some of the Latin background of the word religion? Religio, ligation, ligature. What is ligature? Anybody know what ligature means? Okay, it's something that binds ligaments. There we go. Right? It's that tissue that tissue that holds things together. And ligo means to bind or to tie. And means to do it over and over again. Fundamentally, religion speaks to the things that tie us together and to tie us to the things that matter. Everybody wants to know what the answer to that question is. It is unavoidable what has the highest place. In fact, I've begun tinkering with a gospel presentation that leads with that question. We used to say, what do you think it takes for a person to go to heaven? Which is not a bad question, right? But I think now increasingly we encounter people who they don't care about heaven. They don't, you don't have a point of contact. But what do you think is the most important? Because everybody thinks that something is the most important. Even people who would say nothing is the most important. You still said something's the most important. You just said it's something, right? It's an inescapable question. And then here's what we know. That commitment has profound implications for your life. It sets the direction for your life. It sets the target for your life. Now, one of the things people do is they don't have that well spelled out. The other thing people do is they just lie about it. And so, have you ever met someone who said, well, I'm a Christian. That's the most important thing to me is Jesus. But nothing in their life manifests that. Well, what's the problem? Well, it's just something they say. People can talk a lot, and so their lives are going to really reveal. And if you push on them, or you took them to court, or you push them, they'd eventually spit it out. Well, Jesus is someone on the margins of my life, really making money when you really look at what I'm up to all day long, every day, what floats my boat, what lights my fire, what wakes me up in the morning, what keeps me up at night. It's money, or it's pleasure, or it's my hobbies, or whatever they are. But that question still relates to what is at the center. What is at the center? Now, here's what's going on culturally. In the pre-modern period, that is before, I'm going to say before 1000 AD, and that's somewhat arbitrary. As things start to transition from pre-modern times into the medieval period and then into the early modern and the modern period, the pre-modern period, here's the issue. Which set of answers to resolve these mysteries, we just talked about all these mysteries, which set of answers is correct? That's what the debate was about. And so you had the different philosophies and different religions, and different people would put forth their way to resolve all these issues between finitude and infinitude, and good and evil, and freedom and determination, pain and pleasure, order, chaos, individual, group, material, immaterial, center, margins. And the Romans had theirs, and the Greeks had theirs, and the Platonists had theirs, and the Aristotelians had theirs, and all through the mystery religions, the Gnostics. And the battle was, which answer about what is highest that helps balance all the mysteries of life, which answer is the correct one? And that was the battle that raged. But what began to happen as the gospel went out is the gospel began to change everything, right? And what the gospel really did in the West is through the medieval period, it shaped the Western mind with the gospel's answers about how putting Jesus Christ in the highest place unveiled wisdom about the mysteries of life. It didn't answer every question that we might want to have or everything we might want to know, but it gave us a place to stand. It gave us a place to stand. I ultimately can't answer the question why bad things happen to good people. But I know if I stand at the cross, I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be. And that in the cross, it has a revelation that God was willing to enter fully into the brokenness of the world that He didn't create. And you often hear me say this, that what we have in the gospel is that the best thing and the worst thing that ever happened are the same thing. That only happens in the cross. Okay, so you get that. So there begins to be this larger and larger shared set, this larger and larger shared belief in what has the highest place. And increasingly, and especially in Western, in the West, that was a cross. And so the building at the center of the town was a church, and at the top of the church was a cross, and at the altar of the church was a cross, and everybody went to church, and everybody sat and looked at that cross. And even if they couldn't have articulated Aquinas' Summa Theologica and all of that, they knew that Jesus sat at the center of that. And it allowed Western culture to coalesce and allowed us to have a shared vision about how life ought to work. But in the modern period, so here's where we were up to, and again, I'm picking these numbers, all right? They're debatable. But I would say up to 1800, there was this, the modern period was characterized by this, that Judeo-Christianity settles those issues about what has the highest place. God, Jesus, what the Bible says, 10 Commandments. Those are settled issues, and now we're free to go on about and explore the world, learn things and that sort of thing, but we've got a ballast in this Judeo-Christian worldview. But what started to happen in the postmodern period, and I think that really begins in earnest, let me move my date a little bit, after World War I and World War II. There is this loss, the beginning of this loss of confidence in the West about our culture and about whether or not Judeo-Christianity could account for what was going on. And here's what postmodernity said. The Judeo-Christian worldview can't account for all the things that have gone wrong. It can't account for all the people who don't fit or who are at the margins. Therefore, nothing can account for what's real, what has meaning. And let's see if we can do two things. Let's get rid of Judeo-Christianity, and let's get rid of the idea that anything belongs at the center. Let me say that again. Let's get rid of, so the real, postmodernity made the case that no overarching explanations, no one explanation was better than another. And so you had that radical pluralism. Muslims believe what they want, Buddhists believe what they want, Christians believe what they want, Catholics believe what they want, and just pick and choose. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're all not equally right, they're really all equally wrong. But what's really going on is they're fine for you to believe anything but Christianity. And so here's the other thing. we all know this, but we need to be willing to start saying it, is Christianity is uniquely attacked. Would you agree with me on that? Christianity is uniquely attacked because Christianity played a unique role in Western culture. And if you're going to flip the culture, you got to get rid of Christianity. You got to get rid of Christianity. Yes?
I'm sorry, but who's driving that?
Well, I'll get to that. That's a good question. That's a good question. Let me see if I can tell that story, and I'll try to speed up my telling of it. Okay? And I know this is a little bit laborious, but just hang with me, and you may have to think about it again and again. But that's really the project that is going on. You would say, I think like me, why would anyone want to get rid of Christianity? Do you feel some of that? Why would anybody want to get rid of Christianity? Part of that's wanting to get rid of authority, not wanting to be told what to do. And, yes, it is. And I think it goes back to, and again, I don't want to oversimplify this, but I also think we need to bring some of this language back into the argument. It really, at work in this is really a battle between good and evil. It's really a battle between good and evil. And it really is the spirit of Abel or the spirit of Cain. Now, what you have in this hatred of Christianity is a hatred of the world that God made. Yes, sir?
Couldn't it be who wants to get rid of Christianity is a spiritual thing, Satan?
That's right. And I know that when we say that, non-believers go, oh yeah, y'all going to blame Satan, y'all going to blame demons. And a lot of times we'll let that push us back on our heels. But we need to sort of step back towards that. Is there a good and evil? Because if you don't think there's a good and evil, which really is what postmodernity claims, there is no good or evil. That, by the way, some of you who are Star Wars fans or you're sci-fi fans and you've watched the collapse of Disney has ruined the Star Wars franchise. And the latest thing was called the Acolyte that was just canceled after one season. And here's what one of the stars of the Acolyte said. You need to understand Star Wars, it's not about good and evil. There's no such thing as good and evil. There's no such thing as good and evil in Star Wars. But we want to retell all of these stories. But what the culture is proving is try to tell an interesting story where you don't believe there's good and evil. They're not very good stories. You know what you say at the end of a story where there's no good and evil? I don't even know what that was about. What was that about? Okay? So we really are talking about good and evil, and there is a constant tendency in human beings, in our brokenness, to be angry and frustrated by the fact that life is unfair, that some people have it easy and some people have it hard. Some people are born wealthy, some people are born poor, some people are born with all kinds of gifted physical characteristics, some people are born with a great deal of physical brokenness, and it doesn't appear to be fair. And so they do what Cain did, which is to say, God, this world is dumb, humanity is dumb, this project is dumb, Christianity has got it all wrong, and the best thing we can do is yank it all down. It's just yank it all down. Yes?
Well, and you see in our culture that, especially the people who try to be the influencers, they value shocking
Yes.
and tearing down
Yes.
someone who is good or something that is good. So there became, even in academia, let's see how far we can push
That's right.
That's
right.
Shock.
So another word to add to your just list of things is the word critical. Okay? Critical. You heard of critical race theory. It's basically critical gender theory. And it's part of what I'm fixing to lay on you, but it's this. It is the job to tear it down. When you think, gosh, they're so militant about tearing this stuff down, tearing it down is the point. Please understand that. Now, all of us would say, why would you want to tear things down? Well, why do people want to tear things down? Because they tear stuff down.
So that you don't have to deal with the consequences.
Destroy the value.
You just destroy its value.
So you want to deal with the consequences of what you're doing being wrong.
That's right. It plays into nihilism. Nothing matters anyway. There is no right or wrong. Just do whatever you want.
They want what they want back in its place.
Right.
Right.
They want to deconstruct you.
That's right. So you hear words like, all the words like deconstruct, criticism, abolish. Have you heard the word like abolish the police? You ever heard that? Now you need to be very careful because that's a signal. Abolish is, and here's your word for the night, cultural Marxism. Now that sounds like a conspiracy, I know, and you'll say that to people and they will roll their eyes. I am telling you, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and what you want to know who they are and what's going on, this project is called cultural Marxism. And what cultural Marxism is, I'll lay it down for you, but cultural Marxism is the best the non-Christian Western world has to offer as an alternative to Christianity. And so they don't want Christianity anymore. Well, the question is, well, what are you going to put in its place? And the best thing on offer is cultural Marxism. All right? And it would be antithetical to Christianity. Because here's the deal. Christianity is actually such an overwhelmingly fantastic idea. It's hard to beat, right? And when you come up with another good idea, pretty quickly you realize it grew out of Christianity, right? And so what you really have in cultural Marxism is something that's absolutely antithetical to Christianity and wired to destroy Christianity along with all Western institutions in order for something else to emerge in its place. For some light reading on my way to Bali, I read the Communist Manifesto, and I would encourage you to get a copy of the Communist Manifesto. You get it for free, or you get it for about $1 if you do Kindle and that kind of thing. It's only about 50 pages, right? And he says everything right out. And the lie, again, is that communism and Marxism is an economic theory. It's not. It's a theology. It's a theology. The word theology really is what has the highest place. What has the highest place? And that's what Marxism is about. And what Marx saw was Western society that had rich people and poor people. He saw things mainly in terms of economics. And so here is what, with 15 minutes to go, I'm going to give this a try. Okay, we may have to go through it a couple of times. So, in fact, I made some notes. So let me just stick to this, some of my stuff here. Here's what cultural Marxism, and critical legal theory, critical race theory, gender theory, queer theory, feminist theory, this is all Marxist, all right? It all comes from the same root. I listened to a podcast recently, a guy said, the bodies may be different, but the engine is the same, okay, in all of these things. And so here's what's being offered, is that Christianity is this huge scam. It's actually this huge scam. And it's been perpetuated by these wealthy individuals who needed to come up with a system for holding on to power. And so they invented some things that allow them to hold on to power. Marxism's his gambit was economics. Okay? So here's what he says. The people at the levers of culture decided, and they invented something called private property. They invented it, and then they gave it to themselves. And I want to get these words right. They gave it to themselves, and then they created culture of things that were common sense, neutral, and fair. What they said about the things of the culture is that these things are common sense, neutral, and fair. And so they created the concept of private property, and then said, that just makes sense that everybody can buy a little piece of property and own it, build things on it, develop a business on it, and whatever they build and have on it, they can own, demonstrate their ownership of it. You can have a currency that's a fair exchange between those things. All that is common sense, neutral, and fair, but it's all a lie. It's all a lie. The oppressors invented private property as a big lie to hold on to power and to accrue all of the material resources for themselves. And then they created all of the institutions, education, church, Christianity, religion. What did Marx say about religion? Anybody remember? It's the opiate of the masses, right? Christianity was just invented to delude poor people, to delude the oppressed into accepting capitalism and Western values as normal and common sense and fair. And if it isn't working for you, you're just not a good, moral person, and that's the way it is. And so that's what Marxism is about, is Christianity is a lie that's used to coalesce power to a certain group of individuals. All right? So, what's the solution? What's Marx's solution then for this lie of Western culture?
Destroy it.
Tear it down.
Destroy it all. So another word you need to get is dialectic, okay? It's a dialectic view of history. Things bounce from one extreme to another. And so you have a thesis, and then you need an antithesis, and then out of the flames and ashes of that antithesis, there's a synthesis of something new. So when you ask a true communist, well, what's it going to look like after the revolution? A real communist will say, I don't know. Our job is to burn it down. And then history will just show what just this wonderful utopia will pop out on the other end. Now again, I'm going to show how this relates to some of this gender stuff, but when you say to people, well, if you destroy the family, and if you destroy the centrality of parents raising their children, we're just going to get rid of that as a notion. We're not going to have parents raising children anymore. Well, won't that wreck a lot of people? And what do you suggest in place of it? They don't know. They just know that the family was invented as a lie by the power brokers to hold on to power. The nuclear family is a lie. And so it has to be destroyed. And then whatever's next will emerge from this synthesis, or from the you can grab the wheel of history and turn it yourself through revolution. So that's this idea. It is their job to burn it down. It is their job. It's their job to show how Shakespeare is actually a capitalist, misogynist, denizen of cultural control. And that's what Romeo and Juliet is really about. And so they'll just march through. That's what classical music is about. That's what Renaissance art is about. That is why at the Paris Olympics, they take this imagery of the Last Supper, and they can lie all they want about it not being the Last Supper. That's what it was about. And they know good and well that's what it's about. They need to ruin it all. They need to decolonize and deconstruct so that there's nothing left of it. And then reformulate it with their own vision. So that's Marx. And then what you have then in critical race theory is that now it's not an economic idea of private property, it's whiteness. And so people at the center of Western culture invent this concept of white supremacy. They make it seem normal. What are my three words? Normal, common sense, and fair. And then they build all the institutions around it. So that really the legal system, the educational system, everything exists for one purpose. Now, again, answer me this, Americans. Has true racism played a role in our history as a people? Yes. Horribly so, wrongly so, no justification for it. It's an expression of sinfulness, individual and collective. But you need to hear the difference that what critical race theory says is that's the only reason. That's the only reason for America. That's why America was invented. The 1619 Project makes the case that a bunch of white guys sat around and they thought, how can we turn the world into a white supremacist utopia? Oh, let's write the Declaration of Independence. Let's write the U.S. Constitution. So it's also very much about a univariant analysis. Because here's the deal. Is there unfairness in the Western world? Is there unfairness in capitalism? Yes. Is there abuse of the free market? Yes. You ever run into a lying blankety blank who hosed you in a business deal because they misuse? Of course, right? But that's one of the elements that's going on. What's another reason why somebody might fail in their business? They were lazy or had a bad plan or made terrible decisions or put their money in the wrong place. They had personal responsibility involved in it as well. It's complicated, right? So, but what this critical view of things, this Marxist view of things, is there's only one, and it's why it's so attractive to children, and it's why it's so attractive to 18-year-olds. It's because it's a very simple, you only need to know one thing. It's oppressors versus oppressed. That explains everything. So I've got a one-size-fits-all explanation for everything that's wrong in the world. And then what's super convenient about it is my explanation for what's wrong never includes me. And so what's wrong with the world is you, not me. Okay, I'm on the side of the angel. So, and I'm going to speed this up, or I'm going to try to anyway. So then, here's where we land, because we're gonna let a lot of the emphasis of our time together land on these gender issues. So, and this is going to be a word that's a little grating to your ears, but you need to know it, and it's called queer theory. Queer theory. I'm fixing to get a book called The Queering of American Children, I think is the title of it. And the queer theory has been significantly operational in American education for several decades. And so you need to understand that the people who are turning the knobs in our education system, queer theory runs through it. Now you're going to say you've lost your mind, you're listening to too much, YouTube, whatever it is. But when you have books about two princes that fall in love with each other and get married in our library in Fairhope for the kids, how many of y'all happy about that? That is the result of queer theory, and I'll tell you how. Okay? So, and that's their language. It's the word that they use. And so here's it. Queer theory takes economic Marxism and just replaces private property. It takes critical race theory, and instead of race, it's gender. And so here's what queer theory says, and this is really at the heart of gender ideology, and we'll spend some more time on this next week, is that, let me get my words right. Have you heard cis or heteronormative? Heteronormative, you ever heard the word heteronormative sexuality? Well, here's what queer theory says. Instead of private property or whiteness, it's heteronormative cisgendered sexuality. So the heterosexual people got in charge. No, that's wrong. The people in charge invented heterosexual normativity and monogamous marriage to hold power. So they actually invented heteronormative, cisgendered monogamy and marriage. They invented that for one purpose: to hold power over women, to hold power over children, to hold power over those individuals who could not conform to that heteronormative ideal. And so that's why your marriage exists. It doesn't exist to promote the common good. It doesn't exist to bless children in the next generation. It doesn't exist to be the stabilizing force of human society. It exists to control power. And it's a lie that was invented by the power brokers to hold power and marginalize and oppress people who don't fit in. And so the goal of queer theory, what they want to point out is the lie that it's common sense, neutral, and fair, that the ideal is to be in a heterosexual monogamous relationship for life in which you raise your own children. That's a lie, a trick. that's just intended to control people. So the goal then of queer theory is to get rid, abolish normal. They want to abolish normal. And the place to do that very effectively is at school. And so this deal of the furries showing up and letting the kids dress up like kitty cats and that kind of thing, that's queer theory. You understand that. That's not, oh, just a little Johnny who wants to be himself. It has a very deeply sexual element to it, and it plays into this role that you create yourself. And it's not that we're going to change the definition of normal. The intent is to abolish normal as a concept. There is no more normal. There is no more normal sexuality. There is no more normal genderedness. And that when we burn all of that down, and so I'm telling you, we're just going to have to get hip to some of this stuff. I want to be careful how I say this. They don't want anyone to fit in. And again, I want to be careful. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I even hear this echoing around in all of this anti-bullying stuff. Okay, now I'm not for bullying. Okay? But one person's bullying is just another person's helpful feedback. That is one of the good things about school. It's also one of the good things about sports. I had a coach yell into my face that I won't use his words, but he indicated to me that my intelligence was exceptionally low. Okay? It was a hyperbolic, shall we say. But I got the point. I had some responsibilities to call out a tight end screen, and I missed that assignment, and so I got to find out that perhaps I needed to smarten up just a little bit. Okay? That may have been a bit over the top, but I've heard people say, really, athletics is one of the last places that young people can go and get honest feedback. So because what's the benefit of getting honest feedback? Well, you can make the adjustment so you can do better. And I'm chasing a rabbit, so I won't do it. But anyway, all of this idea that you don't, here's how we'll settle the issue that some kids don't fit in, is we'll just get rid of the idea of fitting in. But you know what another word for fitting in is? Socialization. We all got to live together. We all got to live together. We all got to get along. And we got to learn that process of knowing the difference between what matters and what doesn't matter, what we're going to let go and what we're going to major on. What we can all share is the most important thing. And that is the amazing thing about the relationship between Judeo-Christianity and the Western world. Is this amazing thing happened when you could get millions of people to all share the same idea about what was the most important. Whoom! You get the last 300 years of unbelievable discovery, unprecedented worldwide peace, explosion of the birth rate, world population that essentially goes from 1 billion to 9 billion people in a couple hundred years. It's unbelievable what happens when human beings can find the most important thing and share it together. And just at the moment when we were really starting to get that out and start to export that around the world, the people at the controls decide to yank that out of the center of things. Okay, so let me try to start landing this plane. We have two visions for what's real, for what's good, and they are not commiserate with each other. The game we also get lulled into is, well, we just want our point of view to be included. But really the game is, we want our point of view to be the only point of view. And as long as everyone agrees with what we say, you can participate. But it's going to be one way of seeing the world. And if you don't see it our way, you're a bigot, you're a et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I'll give you something about where all this comes together. The Marxism, the economic Marxism, the the critical race theory and the gender theory. I don't know if this is on Black Lives Matter's website anymore because they spruced it up when some of this got out. But one of the things that used to be one of their values is we disrupt. Here's another word, disrupt. That's a very specific and academic word. And it goes with abolish. So when you hear the word disrupt, it doesn't mean the person is a cultural Marxist, but it means you need to start paying close attention to looking for some other of the key indicators. So this is what BLM's website used to say. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement. Let me say that again. They exist to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively, and that's a Marxism word, that collectively care for one another, especially to our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. Who's missing from mothers, parents, children in that little rendition? No dads, no men. They're telling us what they believe. That the free and fair society that they hope to achieve in the future is one where the nuclear family is gone. Now, here's what the interesting thing about that too is, that's what's called a luxury belief. Do you know who is most hurt by the destruction of the nuclear family? The poorest people, the poorest among us, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, or whatever. It's all this idea that we're compassionate about people who are struggling. And the cultural elites at the top, most of them are all married, or they're in some kind of monogamous relationship raising their own children. It's upside down and backwards. So let me, again, I'm trying to land this plane, so let me see if I can get it somewhere. These are the things that are roiling around in the deep. It's a question about what is the most important, and what I'm trying to do in my life, and what I want to encourage you to do as my brothers and sisters in Christ is, that's the conversation that we need to figure out a way to have. Whether it's a library book, or a particular emphasis that you hear at school, or your kid comes home and lets you know that all of Baldwin County is stolen, is we need to figure out how to hear what's really going on, not in a suspicious way, but in a way that creates a runway to get into some conversations about what is the most important. What is it? What do we want the children of Baldwin County to learn? What do we want them to know? What do we want them to think is the most important? What do you think is the most important? And then if the answers from our institutions are things like, well, we just want every kid to decide for himself who or what she is, then we have a responsibility as people of the truth to say, no, wrong answer. This, of course, forces us to have the God conversation. And to stipulate that we're not going to get into this metaphysical specifics, but we are going to have a conversation about what God you serve. And if you serve the God of dialectical materialism, like a good Marxist, you have to say so. I believe in dialectical materialism. I believe in never-ending revolution until all the vestiges of history have been swept away in order for something new to appear. Really? Well, that's not going to work for us, or that doesn't work. And so that's what's the deep current. And so what we're going to be doing, and we'll start doing this next week, and this is where we'll really start digging into the book then. We're going to answer across these weeks together why culture matters, a read of the cultural waters. Thirdly, the pounding cultural waves, and so we'll get into some of these issues of these cultural manifestations. And then we'll really round it out by pulling together the necessary aspects of a solid Christian worldview that can help us to engage people who see and understand the cultural realities differently. All right? But what I believe is really happening is what I just laid out for you. I believe those are the two oppositional worldviews that are battling for dominance. So, with just a couple of minutes, any questions, anything that I can answer or clarify for you, or anybody just like, Hankins, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Could you say all that again?
What I will try to do, I will bring you some resources next week. There's a really good article that's available online that I feel like's technical enough that it'll give you some meat, but accessible enough that you're not reading it and just thinking, what is this? Because, and Dennis just left, all of this started taking place at the universities in the West. Communism fails in the really starts to fail by the 1970s. It's clear that it's starting to be in trouble, and the word starts to get out. Alexander Solzhenitsyn is able to publish Gulag Archipelago, which tells the story of the gulags and the probably 60 million people who are killed, who are murdered in either the Gulag system or they're just murdered as political dissidents. Again, here's one of the things I want you to catch. Now, understand, and y'all know this about me, so don't mischaracterize what I say. The Holocaust of the Jews, a travesty of inexplicable magnitude. Okay? A horror that we must know about and learn about and be aware of and teach about and never forget forever. 6 million Jews. Okay? Horrible. Based on a racist ideology of just pure evil. 6 million Jews. Horrible. Marxism is responsible for the deaths of probably 150 million people. It's a godless, human-hating ideology that by actual execution or by starvation through concentration camps or by starvation through the kind of epic mismanagement that led to the starvation of, I think, 6 million Ukrainians. They basically just went in and stole all their food, killed all their farmers, stole all their food, gave it to the people in Moscow and just let them starve to death. Our kids learn essentially nothing about that in school. And if you don't think that that's on purpose, you're not paying attention. So, Nazism is horrible and needs to be taught about. Marxism is horrible and needs to be taught about, and that dynamic needs to be understood. But as James is pointing out, you gotta go over it 3 or 4 times to get it straight in your mind. Any questions?
Why are you sure this trajectory that's been set is going to keep on going? I always thought it's just going to implode. It's going to get so ridiculous because what's at the core, it's just removing any kind of surety in life, which is self-destructive.
Yeah, that's a good.
How do you think it's going to conclude? It just seems so ridiculous.
Well, I think it is asking about why you would persist in something like this. Remember, destruction's the point. And so you're watching what's transpiring in Great Britain. Riots in the streets, and that is essentially over that's the manifestation of full-on multiculturalism, unchecked, no thinking, no plan for people being integrated into Western society, and so you cram all these people with diametrically opposed views, and you teach and encourage them to be hateful to each other, to dislike one another, to refuse to share, that they don't have any shared values. You put them in close contact with each other, then you let the economy dive, and people start throwing rocks, and the worst of all those elements come out. And so stuff gets burned, stuff gets blown up, people get hurt, people get killed. But the Marxist says, burn, baby, burn. They're glad for it to happen. And that's the other challenge, is the rest of us, we think that's bad, right? We think that's a sign, ooh, You know, you're going to need to make an adjustment to your belief system because people are burning stuff down. There, they think that's what they want to happen. Yes, sir.
Technical question for next week. Who all will be involved in that? Will other groups coming in?
We have a men's group and a ladies group that meets, and they're going to come and be a part. We're going to do some thinking about whether or not this room is big enough. So I may do some. We may be in the sanctuary if we need a little bit bigger room. Yes.
Will you also be discussing how the Units Festival of 1933 is involved in all this also?
Sure. That, again, there's this nexus, and I'll try to. I know this was kind of nerdy tonight, but there are levels of nerddom that I can go to that just, will make you wish you were anywhere else. And so I'm trying to keep some of that in check with some of the receipts. But I'll at least try to put some resources in your hand. Like, you need to know who Marcuse is. You need to know Derrida. You need to know Foucault. You need to know some of these names that exist in the most sophisticated cosmopolitan echelons. The French existentialists. Those are the people that they rebranded Marxism because Marxism under the communist regime failed, murdered lots of people, looked real bad. So they just peeled the communism off and created something that the term now that's used is cultural Marxism. Here's the mistake that Marx made. Marx thought that you change the politics and the culture will follow. That's how you take over. So the revolution was political, right? Requires a lot of killing. Requires a lot of the Bolshevik revolution. It's a lot of trouble. And then they thought they could impose the cultural changes. After 70 years, they weren't able to accomplish it, and then all of the real economic disaster showed up, right? Here's what the cultural Marxists figured out is they turned that around. Politics is actually downstream from culture. You change the culture first. You change the culture first, and then you can get people to vote this stuff in at the end of the process. And so where do you change the culture? The kids. All of the Marxists went into the educational system. And I can give you the book on that. All of the Marxists went into the schools of education.
I'll give you one that about this room can relate to. The destruction of college football on our culture. If you don't think that the NIL and the destruction of Pac-10, we all grew up with USC in Southern Cal, big football. Traditions that destroyed the value system. One little piece at a time. Just think about what is being destroyed as we look around today.
Yeah, there is a tradition, authority, all of those things, anything that holds us together. Anything that holds us together. Because you take something like football, and we can all, make funny jokes about why 60,000 people have gotten together into a single room to watch 22 young men run around and throw a leather ball at each other, right? But everybody knows good and well, that's not what we're doing in that stadium. You know what we're doing in that stadium? We're watching people hit targets, and we love to watch human beings hit targets. We love to watch human beings expend themselves in a collected effort to hit a goal. And we like it in all kinds of forms. Sport, the arts, the stories we tell, whatever it is. But that's what it comes down to. We have an insatiable hunger to see targets hit. Anybody know what the definition of sin, what the Greek word is hamartia? What does sin mean? Miss the mark. We know that at the heart of sinfulness is that there was something we should have been aiming at. It should have been the highest and the best thing. We actually knew what it was, and we didn't do it. And so but here's what this new movement says. Actually, we're going to get rid of that. There are no targets. Don't bother trying to hit them. Wouldn't it be better if we had a world where there were no targets and no aims? And see, it's all, and now again, because we're talking about some stuff that you could shove it into the area of conspiracy, but it's not conspiracy, it is not paying attention. Like, and I know y'all may all cheer, or maybe you'll throw stuff like this, not keeping score. And everybody gets a, now I don't think that there's Marxists down at the people who do sports for the kids in Fairhope. Right? They don't have a picture of Lenin on the wall, you know. But that is the soaking in of this notion. Wouldn't it be better if no one lost? Because little Jimmy won't have to cry. But what do you get if no one loses? No one wins. Right? And I'll just tell you a funny story. So my Jake, who's the accountant now, he's in his senior year. They didn't keep score, but Jake knew what the score was. He's keeping a running tally in his mind. He's out there throwing a fit. We're losing by 10 points. I'm like, we're not even keeping score. Well, I know what the score is. I mean, he knew what the score was. And he knows the point of playing the game is what? It's win. It's to win, right? Now, it's to win fairly so that you can, it's not only, the point isn't not only to win, but the best winning is to win repeatedly and to have people want to play with you repeatedly. That's the winningest winning that there is. But so I'm not saying that there's some grand conspiracy to not keep score. What I am saying is you all know, most of you know, because y'all are from a certain generation, no one would even have thought of not keeping score. And if they had said, James, when you were playing pee-wee ball, well, we're not going to keep score anymore, what would have been the reaction? Well, what are you talking about? Why play, right? But when you say in these little subtle ways over and over again, you know, one of the worst things in the world will be for little Jimmy to lose. No, the best thing in the world, one of the best things in the world for little Jimmy is for him to learn how to lose, to learn how to take the lessons away from that. Sometimes you lose because there's a winner and a loser. What's another reason why you lose sometimes? Because you're not good at the sport, because you didn't give your best effort, because you wouldn't be a good teammate, because you didn't try on every play, you didn't run out first base, you didn't give maximum effort, and so that's why you lost. And you learn the most important lessons of life and the most meaningful and satisfying things. So, but when you get this, it's like fluoride in the water. It would be better if if everyone was the same and everybody got the trophy and nobody cried. And nothing was hard. Life shouldn't be hard. Life should be easy. Everybody should have the same.
Where are these Marxists that are pulling the strings hiding since we don't know?
Yeah, that's what, they are in the faculties of universities. That's where you're most likely to find them. And I don't know this for a fact, but I bet if I looked it up, they're at the faculties at the schools here in Alabama. And there might not be a ton of them. But if you want to find an actual card-carrying Marxist, if you want to find people who are actually members of the Communist Party, the most likely place you can find one is on the faculties at secular universities. And they are, and so that's where critical theory is taught. That's where this lives most self-consciously. Yes?
So then there are kids sitting in the classroom listening to us.
Yes. Now, we have all of these riots over Palestine, right? And where are all the riots about Palestine occurring? Not only on college campuses, on the premier Yale, Princeton, Harvard, Columbia, Dartmouth, the premier institutions. And if and presidents who can't give a straight answer on genocide, what constitutes genocide, and whether or not genocide is calling for genocide is okay or not okay. It's not an accident. It's where these ideas are taught. It's where the oppression narrative is taught, and it's very much where gender ideology is taught. My son, who's now 30, was a freshman at University of Mississippi. Ole Miss, hotty toddy, all right? Mississippi, not known for being a bastion of liberalism. One of his first classes, you're going to find him in the English departments where you're running into a lot of these folks. John Davis, tell us your name, or tell us your major, tell us your preferred pronouns. This is in 2013.
Wow.
This is 10 years ago.
They had preferred pronouns 10 years ago?
So what do you think is going on now? The sorority girls at Ole Miss, they got to go in for an orientation. It's taught by two lesbian ladies, and they teach the girls. And just whatever you think of when you think of an Ole Miss sorority girl, that's what they look like. Cute, blonde, they're little sorority girls. And are taught by two lesbians. One of your goals here at college is you need to have as many and as varied sexual encounters as you possibly can fit in. You will not really know who you are until you've had as hedonistic a time as you can generate. Well, you don't have to tell that to too many 18-year-olds to get people interested in that, right? These things that I'm telling you are 10 years ago. Okay, again, not at Berkeley, not at NYU, not at Columbia, right here. So, knowing that that's what is at work, and I know you hear these things, and on one level, it's distressing to hear them. It's distressing, and so you got to let some of that distress wash over you, and then let it inform you so that you can engage. Because if you say to someone who spouts this drivel, well, that sounds like cultural Marxism to me. That's going to catch your 20-year-old knuckleheaded nephew who has 3 ideas that he's thought about for 3 minutes apiece. May help him to stop short and pay attention and start thinking deeply.
Doesn't this book move around to sharing Jesus as the only antidote?
That's where this lands, right? Is how do we turn the conversation back to Jesus? Because socially conservative political platform is not going to save anybody from hell. Now, I'm glad to talk with someone about that because I think those things are touched by a Judeo-Christian worldview. But we need to find ways to turn the conversation back to Jesus because Jesus is the only thing that's going to rescue people who've lost their way. You know how I know that? Because Jesus rescued me from my darkened understanding. All right? Great questions. Let me land this plane completely since I've been telling you for 30 minutes I was going to land it. And grab a copy of this book if you haven't yet. And we'll start looking, we'll do gender ideology. We'll do that next week. Father, we thank you for the fact that we can know the truth and the truth will set us free. Lord, we thank you that you've set us free with the truth that's found in Jesus. Lord, we know that ultimately the solution to every problem is Jesus, and that the spiritual bondage that is representative of so much of our culture can only be resolved through the freedom that's found in Jesus alone. When the Son sets you free, you're free indeed. Help us to remember that and for our engagement to be Jesus' engagement. I ask it in His name. Amen.